Control Draw. Address and search bar edit.
Okay, for this video, we're going to see how JAWS approaches this accessibility resources page, accessibility resources page, and we're going to let it read it, and we're going to kind of see how it gets around these links and the headings and stuff like that, and we're going to kind of drill down a little bit and look at the lists of headings, the structure of the links, and then we're going to pop over to the wave analyzer. We're going to see what errors that it's thrown, and we're going to figure out how to make our usability better for this page. And hopefully this is not going to be a super long video. I know I keep saying that, but you know, they tend to go on a little bit. So here we just let JAWS do its thing.
Enter. Breadcrumb. Page has 4 regions, 9 headings and 25 links. Accessibility resources vertical bar Drupal accessibility. Same page link skip the main content. User account menu navigation region heading level 2 user account menu list of 1 items. Visited link login. List end user account menu navigation region end. Visited link graphic home. Visited link Drupal accessibility. Main navigation region heading level 2 main navigation list of 6 items. Visited link course scope and requirements. Visited link intro video getting to know JAWS. Visited link installing JAWS. Visited link laptop shortcuts. Visited link accessibility resources. Visited link videos weeks 1-3. List end main navigation region end breadcrumb navigation region heading level 2 breadcrumb list of 1 items. Visited link home list end breadcrumb navigation region end main region heading level 1 accessibility resources article heading level 2 regulations and standards. Link https://www.section508.gov/content/learn left parent section 508 is the law that governs all federally mandated accessibility, electronic and physical. WCAG is the standard for electronic resources on the web, created in the interest of compliance with 508 regulations right parent. Link https://www.w3.org/tr/understanding-wcag20/overview.html left parent. Our own Jim Allen serves on several of the task forces in the WCAG initiative right parent. Link http://captioninky.org/quality_captioning.html left parent captioning standards right parent. Heading level 2 data and research papers. Link http://.
Okay, so started at the beginning, and JAWS worked its way through all of the links in the header section, visible and invisible to sighted users. Then it worked its way through the main navigation region, which are these tabbed links. Then it worked its way through the breadcrumb trail, and then it hit the actual content with this H1 header for accessibility resources, and then this H2 header for regions and standards. And the numbering of our headers should be in a hierarchical format, with the most important and larger container having the lower number being H1, and as the content becomes more granular and lower in the hierarchy, the numbers increase to H1 to H2 to H3, etc. In my life, I really don't see much below H3. I know that in the fun world of like hardcore technical requirements documents and stuff like legislation and laws and stuff like that, like the numbering systems can get pretty granular, several digits in decimal places, and I could imagine that some of those documents, if they were marked up using the H1, H2, H3 type of semantic markup, that you could get down into like H4 or something like that, but I don't really see that in everyday usage. So the headers are good. Getting around the links was good. I want to pay attention to the actual entries for these resources. The first thing is that JAWS saw a raw URL and it read a raw URL. I've told people both ways are kind of okay. I believe that JAWS and NVDA both have a means to give the user information about whatever text is embedded in the hyperlink and or just the raw URL. So that, like the text embedded in the hyperlink, if I were going to have a hyperlink in this document, I might choose to create a hyperlink for this term, the law, that would point to this URL. And so it would be up to the user if the screen reader was going to either read the portion of the href tag that said the law, or the portion that said https / www section dot whatever, So I think that there's a little bit to be said for having the raw URL, because seeing like the unequivocal source of the document is good for establishing credibility of materials that you're going to spend your time reading. And knowing that this URL points to a .gov kind of automatically gives some credibility to this resource. Our w3.org is a well-known organization, and so having the raw URL and maybe even getting like some of this directory structure, like here where it has the slash and the tr, another slash, understanding the wcag / overview HTML. I mean, that could give somebody some information that might be useful for them. But all in all, I think that for your general purpose reader who is not super concerned about where the document comes from or where the document sits in like the information structure of the server that it's housed on, that it might be more useful for them to actually just get the English call to action, kind of like using the law instead of the raw URL. And also, we're probably going to take a look at, in another video, the difference between the user settings that give the user the raw URL or the English equivalent, or whatever their home language is. Just the human readable content, something that gives the link some context or lets the user know what the link is for. So that's about it for the structure of the page. It's really simple, and it's got a two-level hierarchy, and it's got a bunch of links with some descriptions. And I think content-wise, other than the URL issue that we just discussed, I think that I could improve this document by adding and taking away a little bit from these blurbs that state where the link goes. So I'm probably going to, after doing the wave testing, I'm probably going to break away from here, and I'm going to revamp this page, and then I'm going to keep this page and then set up the new page as like a sibling, and then I think we might go back and forth between the two versions and see if there's a difference in usability, if see which one reads easier, just to kind of experience it and like get an impression of it. So now we're going to move over to the wave report, which I've already pulled up, and I don't think that we need JAWS for this. So JAWS, you have to go away, and then I'm just going to check on the screen recorder real quick and make sure that it's still recording, and I can actually see that, yeah, okay, I can see that it's working. I was having some problems with it before, not recording what I needed it to record. And since I'm paranoid, I'm going to check one more time, and the recording button is lit up, so we're good. So let's look at these findings. First of all, I'm going to completely bypass discussing ARIA, as shown here, until I get to my ARIA video. I am going to cover it in this course because if people are going to be doing this wave accessibility testing, they're going to see ARIA, they're going to wonder what it is, and I think that I should at least provide a basic overview of what the stuff is. So let's look at the summary. What do we have here? We have 0 errors, 2 alerts, 1 feature, 12 structural elements, 14 HTML and ARIA elements, 3 contrast errors, and we're going to look at each of these. The first one's easy because this page is so simplistic that there's not really much of an opportunity for errors to creep in. And this is a kudos for the Bartik theme that you can do your basic web page of this this kind of design, and the only accessibility issues that you're going to run into are the ones that you create yourself by the way that you structure your content. Now we have 2 alerts, and these are going to be doubled up links. We've got 2 links that lead to the same place, and I don't know where the other error icon is. Here's one. It's got a little hand. Okay. Oh, it's 2 link alerts. Here's another one. This link goes to a PDF, and it's not an error. It's just letting me know that number one, I've got 2 links that go to the same place. This Drupal accessibility is a link that goes to the home screen, and this shark graphic is also a home. One feature, and I don't know what the feature is. We're going to look at that in depth. 12 structural elements. We'll look at those. HTML and ARIA. I think that they put this stuff here because you can do pretty much everything that you really need to do using basic HTML. Every tag that kind of is user facing or provides a feature that a user would notice has got representation in the accessibility tree. All your form elements, headings, links, lists, pretty much anything you can do with just straight HTML is going to have some kind of equivalent or some kind of like placeholder in the accessibility tree. The newer stuff, HTML5 and ARIA, I mean, they're not really that new. They're both of those standards are probably about 10 years old by now. But they're putting it in here, I think, just so the developer can just know that these more advanced accessibility tags are present. And then we've got 3 contrast errors, and we'll look at those in more detail. We're going to flip over to this is the summary screen. Now we're going to flip over to the actual items, the full details. And like I said before, here with our alerts, we didn't have any errors in red, which is good. With our alerts, we had 1 redundant link, and I already explained that being the 2 links to home up in the top. And then we had 1 link to a PDF document. And maybe they're flagging this because when you send somebody off of your site, you're no longer vouching for the accessibility of the content. I'll say that again. You're only responsible for the accessibility of your own website, and if someone else has put up a PDF, then their organization is responsible for making sure that that PDF is accessible. And if it's not, that's just an informed decision that you're making. You could choose to put a disclaimer on your links that lead off your site. Personally, I think that the internet's been around for quite a while now, and I think that most users are going to understand that, I don't know, maybe that's just an assumption that people will understand that if they go from one site to another that the ownership of the content changes. But I guess in real life I've seen differently, so I shouldn't make that generalization. Okay, our features, it's just calling out we've got 1 linked image with alternative text, and what that is that's the shark image, and the alt text that I put on the shark image is null, and I think I explained this in another video. The Bartik theme will not let you move forward and save your panel or your block or your view or whatever if it has this image element. So I guess it won't let you save your image content unless you attribute some alt text to it. And for this alt text, I put null because this picture of a shark does not give me any information. If it were something that conveyed information, then it would need to have some alt text. So if this page were an article about the White House, no, let's say if this page were an article about the desk in the Oval Office, and there was a picture of the desk in the Oval Office with some feature, then I would write alt text that visually described what's in the picture. It would say something like, a picture of a desk with the middle drawer partially open and a blotter with a calendar on the top of it. Something like that. If it pertains to the story, if it pertains to the narrative, then it needs alt text. If it's just for decoration, or if it doesn't pertain to the content, it does not need an alt tag, because the person who is viewing it or ingesting the content with their screen reader, they don't need to know that you put a picture of a plant there for decoration, so it does not need an alt tag. Also, I want to point out right now about the difference between an alt tag and a caption. These are two different things. The alt text is nothing more than a description of the visual aspects of the picture. A caption is supposed to invoke a thought in the reader's mind. A caption goes along with the image. It doesn't necessarily describe what's in the image visually. It describes the idea or the concept that the user is supposed to receive from viewing the image. And it's a weird distinction. However, if and it, I'm making the distinction because if you just you write a caption for your picture, and let's go back to the example of the desk in the Oval Office. Okay, you would have the picture of the desk and the caption, maybe the articles about the history of the desk in the Oval Office. You would look at that picture and you would write a caption, you know, this desk was made from planks from the USS Constitution, or whatever the story is behind the construction of that desk. You would not put that in the alt tag. If you put that caption in the alt tag and you leave it as a caption, then as your screen reader user is parsing through the page, he's going to get that information once as the alt tag, then he's going to get it again as the caption. So a caption is for telling your story. The alt tag is not for telling your story. The caption is not necessarily about giving a visual description of the image. An alt tag is for the purpose of giving a visual description of the image. Okay, so that's my rant or soapbox speech about alt tags and captions, and when to use alt tags and when to not use alt tags. Okay, so Wave is going to give us a little rundown of our hierarchy of content. We've got one H1 and we've got 8 H2s, and that's really as it should be. It should be the many up to the 1. We've got an ordered list, which I discovered is the breadcrumb system. For some reason, Bartik theme wants to call it an ordered list, and it doesn't really cause us any issues. So it wasn't flagged as an alert, and it wasn't flagged as an error. It's an ordered list. Then we've got 2 unordered lists, and once again, these are part of the menuing system. So even though visually, like this main navigation menu looks like a bunch of tabs, the accessibility tree sees it as an unordered list. Then we've got our HTML5 and ARIA stuff, which I'm going to sidestep for right now. Then we're going to look at the contrast. Um, Here are our contrast warnings, and if you'll notice here on the printout of the code, in our digital printout of the code, aka our screen, we don't see any error markers, these guys. We can look at those by going into the code, and we can see where these contrast violations are. And let's see what this information thing says. Um, yeah, so the minimum contrast ratio that we want to have is 4.5 to 1 for large text, and for small text we want a lower ratio. Yeah, so here are the ratios for contrast, and the way you get the ratio is you get a little piece of software for your browser or standalone application that is a contrast checker, and there are a million of them out there. I might do a contrast checker video for this, but I think most people can figure that out for themselves. We've got standards and guidelines for contrast, and where is it? It's in the WCAG, Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, and this is pretty much the I don't want to say the law of the land, but what I want to say is the suggestion of the land. It's got criteria for pretty much every aspect of a web page, specifically web content accessibility guidelines, and I'm not going in any further into that right now. Let's get back to these contrast errors. Close this guy out here. Oh yeah, here we go. Okay, so the first one, I just click on the icon, it takes me right to it, and I look at this the description of this element, and the CSS class is visually hidden, so that, and it's calling it a skip link, so they did a good job of naming this stuff behind the scenes. So it's this thing that's like right here at the very top center of the banner that allows you to skip all of this navigation stuff and get right to business, and it's invisible. And what it looks like here with this contrast checker that's built into the wave is that it's like your standard link color, but it's on top of this dark background here. And I think this is like an optical illusion. I think that like this and this are actually the same color, but because this is in a bigger area and has this kind of blue guy here, that it looks a lot darker when it's isolated by itself, I think. So anyway, because this is hidden, it's invisible, it doesn't really make a difference. The contrast is mostly for people with low vision or bad eyesight who need high contrast. And I know that anybody who is over 40 can attribute or can attest to the fact that low contrast, when you're trying to read something, low contrast and small text together is the kiss of death for a website as far as I'm concerned. I'll find that information somewhere else. So our next contrast error is this H2 class, once again, visually hidden, and this is the Bartik theme, and it's the account menu. So it's going to be something over here, I believe, that's, once again, it's hidden, so that is of no concern to us. And just we look at the color checker, it's it's pulled out this, like, these colors are called out in these CSS classes, and I don't know where the um, this is another can of worms. Theming these CSSs, you have to like weed your way through like a gazillion CSS files trying to find the exact class for the element that you want to style. So that's like, I think that doing any styling to the Bartik theme is like out of scope for this class, because you could do an entire year of figuring out how to retheme Bartik, and that also requires that you kind of roll your own theme and install it, roll your own sub theme and install it on top of Bartik, which requires messing around on the server And I might do a video about like why I'm not going to retheme this and why you don't want to mess with the core themes. Just a short video showing what it actually looks like when you get into that Pantheon server and you see how the themes are laid out for Drupal and how much work it takes to actually get a good theme going on. So anyway, these colors are called out in some CSS file, like buried deep inside of the server in some folder somewhere. They're not causing us any harm because they're invisible, because they're visually hidden, whatever that class means, whether or not it's got a visibility flag switch in the code, or if it's just the color scheme that renders it invisible. It's really of no matter to us because it's not causing any problems. Now this third one, H2 class visually hidden, again, block Bartik main menu, whatever that means. This is our main navigation thing, and once again we've got, it's hidden, it's visually hidden, so I don't know, I think it's just calling it out, but it's not causing me any problems. So that's good. I mean, I guess it's cool to have Wave or some. There are a bunch of these accessibility checking tools out there. You can pay for them. There are free ones. Wave, because it's free and because it's by WebAIM, who are kind of like they're a huge name in the accessibility world, and the WCAG people. Um, you know, it's a good tool. So it's good that it lets you know possible issues with your site, and then you can investigate and use your accessibility knowledge, to make your judgment calls about how you want to fix stuff that seems to be a problem. Okay, so going back to this guy, the only real issues that we we had no errors. We had some contrast issues that were inconsequential, and we didn't really have any problems with the structure. So basically, what I'm still left with the improvements that I was talking about earlier, which is like providing the URL information in English, and then just kind of doing a redo of these explanations to see if I can just make this a better document. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this. I'm going to go and redo the document and set up a side-by-side and do another quick video and show what the experience is like between the two. And that's it for this video.